Hello everyone, Earl Henderson, Primordial Defense. Thank you for watching. Today's video is going to be on fake IDs and how to catch them. Whether you are a doorman, security guard, bouncer, bartender, cocktail waitress, owner of a bar, whatever, this video is going to be of interest to you. I'm going to show you what different types of fake IDs there are and how to spot them. When it comes to a business like a bar, nightclub, tavern, dance hall, whatever you want to call it, liquor store, there's always going to be underage people trying to get alcohol. It's never going to end. And so we want to reduce our criminal and civil liability when it comes to underage people trying to consume alcohol on a licensed premise or trying to purchase alcohol from a place like a liquor store or a convenience store trying to sell beer or something like that. If it's a bar, nightclub, whatever, and there's an underage person inside, the bar can actually have some criminal liabilities. If the owner has too many citations for underage being on a licensed premise, or their bartenders have gotten citations for serving underage or something like that. If they get so many citations, the state's ABC board or their alcohol licensing board, whatever the state, whichever state you're from, whatever they call that entity, they can revoke that bar's license to be able to serve alcohol. A bartender can be given a citation for serving an underage person. With that comes court costs, things like that. And for a bartender who is making something like $1 to $2 an hour wage and then counting on tips, going to court can be kind of a costly thing for them. Even just for the regular bouncers and regular security inside the bar as well. Or even in the liquor store, the person working the counter, these people aren't making buku money. So anytime there's a citation involved and they have to go to court, there's going to be some money involved there that could be coming out of their pocket. Now, if their employer is a good employer and will cover those costs for them, then good on that employer. But if the employer doesn't want to cover those costs and there's nothing that says they have to cover those costs, then the individual who got that citation is going to have to eat that cost. It also reduces civil liability. So I can't recall off the top of my head if there has been any cases where an underage person has gone into a bar, drank, left, or even got hurt inside the bar or left and got hurt afterwards, and then the bar be sued. Now, we of course have seen cases where a person has gone into a bar, was overserved by the bartender, left, got in the car, took off, hit another vehicle, killed a family in there, and then the bar gets sued for that. We've seen that happen. I just can't recall if an underage person went into a bar, got hurt in some way, and then the bar was civilly liable for it. But just because I haven't heard of it doesn't mean that it's not capable of happening. And with this litmus society that we live in, there's a good chance of that happening. There's what I like to categorize as 4 different types of fake IDs. The first one is going to be an actual real legit government made issued ID. It's just that the person presenting it is not that person. The second type of fake ID is again a real legit government made and issued ID, but the person's who's presenting it is not them and they have altered that ID in some way. A third categorization of a fake ID is what I like to call an internet bot ID. This is something you can go online, type in your info, and a company sends you a PVC card ID with little holograms and stuff on it, and it looks, to the untrained eye, pretty legit looking. And the fourth classification of a fake ID is one that is totally homemade, made in someone's room or basement with a printer and a little X-Acto knife and some ingenuity and a very, very deep-rooted longing for getting in the club. What you see before you right now on film are legit fake IDs, like IDs that people built in their house, IDs that people bought off the internet, and there's a couple of them that are actual real legit government issued IDs, but they've been altered in some way. I will go through these as I'm showing you different things. Whenever a person comes up to you and they're going to be presenting this ID to you, you need to know what the IDs are supposed to look like before they ever get there to you. So if you're a security director of a bar or nightclub, you're an owner of a nightclub or whatever, you're going to want that person on your door checking IDs to have some type of experience. This should not be their first time checking IDs without anyone there giving them some kind of supervision. If you're going to have someone on that door for the very first time checking IDs, they need someone there with them, giving them guidance, giving them pointers, coaching them along the way. That way they're getting the best amount of training they could get and not just being thrown to the wolves and given a sink or swim mentality. So how do you figure out what real IDs look like? Well, the first thing you do is open up your wallet and take your ID out. Take your ID out and start studying it. Look at it. Look at the holograms. Hold the ID up to the light. Shift it back and forth. Let the light hit the holograms. Study what those look like, where they're located at. Use an ultraviolet light to scan the ID. See if there's any UV markings on there that you can't see with your naked eye. If you work in a college bar, then the other people that you work with could be out of town or out of state. So you can ask to see their IDs as well. Look at the barcodes, look at the holograms on there. Look to see if there's any UV markings on there. Get a good feeling of what they are. As time progresses, you're going to, especially if you're in a really busy bar, especially in a college town or just a large town, you're going to get a lot of experience handling IDs, and it's going to come to you pretty quick. If there's something wrong with that ID, you're just going to be able to tell by the shading of it. It's hard for me to explain verbally what you're going to be able to tell, but you can just tell by looking at the color of it and the pixels or whatever. If it looks like it's just a shoddy kind of job, you're going to be able to tell once you've got your experience in. But if you're brand new to this, these are some tips to help you out. But really, getting good at catching fake IDs just comes with time. You can also get a book of IDs. Usually beer manufacturers, liquor manufacturers have produced these, and they've given them out nationally to their distributors. So for example, Miller, I know that they used to produce a book of IDs that had all 50 state IDs in there, and it had a description of what the holograms were supposed to look like. It had an image on there that showed what the holograms looked like. It had a description, an image of what the UV markings looked like. It had more than one photo of each state's ID to show you what they looked like. And it was a really good resource. I'm not familiar if Miller still produces that book or not, but I'm sure an internet search would be able to answer that for you. But I do know that there are some ID books out there that you can get. When a person comes up and presents an ID to you, the first thing you want to do, other than already knowing what ID should look like, is you want to get the ID in your hand. A lot of times people will come up and they'll hold their wallet out with the ID inside of it and expect the person to examine the ID through the little window the ID or on the wallet itself. Go ahead and ask them to take that ID out. They take it out, you get it in your hand. There's two reasons for this. One, you cannot inspect the ID very well when it's inside the wallet. Being able to handle that ID by just doing something as simple as just doing this, which it's impossible to convey to you the feeling of this. Maybe I could, so maybe just by watching and hearing it, this is a real legit government made ID. And this is a homemade ID. See how it's very flexible. This isn't nearly as flexible. It's made out of PVC. This is just paper. You can even hear the paper in there. It's way too flexible. So being able to feel the ID, taking the ID out and tilting it and letting the light hit it just right to see the holograms, and then just using your UV light if you need to check any UV on there, something like that. The second reason for holding that ID in your hand is once you've busted them for being underage, you now have the ID in your hand, and they just can't run off with it and try again next week when someone else is working the door. Some other key tips to checking fake IDs is having a trustworthy person on the door. That is probably one of the most key elements to protecting the bar and nightclub and protecting the owner's interest. It's having a trustworthy person at the door who's not likely going to take a bribe and who's not likely just going to let underage in just because they want to be in the crowd. You know, they want to be the cool guy, whatever. You can't just put anybody on that door, because people will let underage in. They'll take an extra 20 at the door. They'll take a 50. They'll take 100, whatever. If it's a college town and there's a guy checking IDs and the girls are flirting with them hard, yeah, the guy's very susceptible to thinking with their other head, and end up allowing that underage group of girls to come in. So one of the most key things is having a trustworthy person, having tools with you, having a UV light and a flashlight. Bars and nightclubs normally are not under very bright fluorescent lights. They're not bright as the conditions that you're seeing these IDs under. The lights are dimmed. There's flashing lights. Sorry, I was grabbing my flashlight. There's flashing lights coming from the band. There, smoke if you're in an area that still allows smoking in there, or it could be from a smoke machine from the band stage, or coming from the dance floor or something like that. But going back to getting the ID in your hand. So you got the ID in your hand, and once you're pretty kind of sure that this person is not who they say they are, or the ID's fake, you can go ahead and start quizzing them on things on the ID. For example, one trick that I always like to try to use was for Kentucky IDs, the middle initials, it's all there is. The middle names are not spelled all the way out. And by the way, I have no problem with this info being shown, because these are real legit fake IDs. The IDs that are real, I've blocked out identifying information. But these are real deal legit fake. They're just pieces of paper and stuff. And I highly doubt that these people use their real info. If they did, they're stupid. But anyway, the middle initial, at least for Kentucky, the middle names were never on there. So one of my favorite tactics was to ask a person what their middle name was. And sometimes the person, without ever thinking, would blurt out their actual real middle name. So for example, this one, the middle name or the middle initial is A. I don't remember how I caught this one, but just an example, I could have asked this person what their middle name was, and they could have said Deanna. And sometimes right after they blurt that out, I would see a little flicker in their eyes and they'd realize, oh crap. Or I'd ask them what their middle name was, and they would just give an initial because they memorized everything on this card, and they memorized the letter. Like, what's your middle name? A. Your middle name is A. Yeah. A what? It's just A. And they would have this bewildered look on their face, coupled with a little bit of, oh crap, I didn't think of that. And that would be one way to get them. Quizzing them on the geographical information on there. So for example, this one says Louisville. Even if you don't know anything about Louisville, you can bluff with them and ask them questions, like, oh, so you're Haddon Road, you went to Washington High School, or you went to Lincoln High. If they were using some of the geographic area that was accurate to where they're from, most of them didn't. They just, they picked some random place. Then they're gonna, be confused about what you're talking about, and they could be like, oh yeah, I went to Lincoln High. Chances are, if you pulled some name of some place out of your butt, there's not going to be a legit place in that area. So when they start agreeing with you on something that you're lying about, boom, you got them right there. Astrology. So usually girls know astrology stuff pretty good, and if they weren't thinking, you could ask them, what's your sign? And they could, just like with the middle initial, give out their real sign. The height and weight. Check out the height and weight on the IDs. If it says they're 6 foot or something like that, and they're like 5 foot tall, that's a clear indication. If it says they have brown eyes, but they have blue eyes, that's another indication. And I've had people before say, oh, I have contacts in. Okay, we'll take one out. But what? You put them in there, didn't you? Take one out. Prove to me that you have brown eyes. And usually they just it's up at that point. Things like hair color, which hair color, that can be easily passed off as someone dyeing their hair or something like that. But if you're looking at an ID and it has someone as a brunette, but the person standing in front of you is a blonde, like I said, people dye their hair, but something like that should be something to cue you in on wanting to quiz this person a little bit more. You can watch their body language. If they appear to be nervous, they're fidgeting, they're averting eye contact with you, then those are indications that they're trying to be deceitful. A lot of times when I'd have someone come up and produce a fake ID to me, they would look at the ground, or they'd look off to the side. They wouldn't look at me. Or some of them would just hold their phone in front of them and pretend to be on their phone. But I could tell that there's no glow on their face. And because I'm so tall, I can actually see the screen. The screen's not even on. They just got their phone in front of them and they're just moving their thumb in front of it, pretending that they're just being on their phone. Body language like that is a good indicator. If you are at the door and you watch a group of people come up and the group is still there and you're checking IDs and you come across one that, you're pretty sure it's probably going to be fake. Another tactic that I like to do was ask the friends, like, hey, what's this person's name? the person who had the ID, that has a fake ID, they may remember everything on this ID and be able to rattle off really quick what their date of birth is, what their license number is, what their expiration is, what their address is, etc. They could recite that very quickly. But generally, the friends they came there with, they never bothered to remember any of that information. And so a lot of times when I would ask the friends, like, hey, what's this person's name? They would blurt out that person's real name. Or they would stand there like a deer in headlights and be like, crap, we never thought of that. And then boom, you got them. Another tactic that I've done before is, and this has been ones, usually it's with them using a real ID and they've got someone who looks almost just like them. But I'll ask them to, or it's a fake ID with a bogus name on there. Another tactic, what I've done is I'll just ask them, because they got their phone on them right there, usually. I'll be like, all right, well, I don't think this is you, but prove it to me. Show me your Facebook name on your phone. And usually that shuts them down right there, and they'll tuck their tail and go away. You can call their bluff. Tell them, like, hey, I don't think this is you. I'm gonna keep the ID, but if you want it back, you just call the local police and they'll come down here and they'll get your information. They'll look at the ID. But if you do that and it's not your real ID, they're going to arrest you for having a false ID. They don't know if the police are going to do that or not, but usually when there's any inclination that they could get in some legal trouble, then they start telling the truth, or they just turn around and walk away at that point. Or you can just, and I've had this actually happen before, but you could also call their bluff and be like, man, this isn't you. I went to school with this guy. And that's a funny one, especially when I've had people bring an ID to me and it's the same person who was in my graduating class. I've had that happen probably 2 times I know of off the top of my head. And then I've had a few others who I went to school with, and I knew them. They were either a class above me or a class below me, and someone tried to pass that ID off to me. I'm like, no, man, I know this person. I went to school with them. But even if you don't know that person at all, you can still call their bluff and be like, no, man, I know this guy. I used to work with him, or I went to school with him. And again, the body language will tell you everything. Having a second opinion. So, if you're kind of unsure, if it's like brunette in the photo, but it's a blonde and they look kind of similar, having that second opinion, usually a woman, checking the ID can be pretty good. Women are pretty good at noticing little details and stuff like that. So you can, have a partner there at the front door, double check it and everything and see if it's, passes their smell test. So getting into the IDs themselves. As I said, it helps to know what your IDs look like for your state. And the IDs that I'm going to be showing are going to be Kentucky specific. I do have a couple of other state IDs that were homemade IDs. But for the most part, this is going to be about Kentucky IDs because that's where I'm located at. So this is a legit government ID. I've blocked out the identifying information and put a little mark through the dude's face, so can't tell who it is. Now I'm going to attempt to tilt this and see if it shows up in the camera. But by tilting this, you can see right along in here holograms. And these holograms, I'm going to get it closer. There we go. So this is the Kentucky Department of Transportation logo. This is on all Kentucky IDs, whether it's a identification card, an instructional permit, a regular operator's license, a commercial operator driver's license, what have you. These little hologram symbols are going to be there at the bottom. And this is one of the important reasons for taking the ID out of the wallet, is so that you can take the ID and tilt it and see if that hologram exists. Now, let me find my goofy, obvious fake ID. All right, so this one right here, let's see if I can find. So this little globe symbol, so this was an ID that was obviously bought off the internet. And these companies will put holograms on their IDs to make them look kind of authentic. And this one is just a globe of the earth. So that's the dead giveaway. Anytime you see something like that, boom, it's an obvious fake. This one right here, anytime you see a little key symbol or a little lock or something like that, let's see if I can get the other ones to show up. Now this one just has a bunch of keys across the front in the hologram. Oh, the little seal right there. So the little seal, let's see here. What's it say? Seal of authenticity. Yeah, that seems super legit. I don't think I have any other goofy looking holograms. But usually it's those type of holograms, little globe, or you have the little lock and key symbols, or it says authentic or something like that, or it just says, like, I think some of the Illinois IDs, fake ones I've had, they'll have DMV in like a vertical fashion. It'll just be like DMV multiple times as a hologram across the front. And for the untrained eye, it looks kind of legit. So that's one of the reasons why you have them take it out of their wallet, so that you can tilt it and see what the holograms are looking like. But you have to know what the real holograms look like. Another thing, and this may be a little bit difficult to do under the bright light. Let's see if it shows up in camera. If not, I'll go turn the light off. All right, so right here in between the black marks is an ultraviolet writing. And when you take a UV light and you hold it up against there, you can see, let me go turn off the light real quick. See if that will help bring it out some. There we go. So this just happens to say the Bluegrass State, and that's on Kentucky IDs. Find another one here. Oops. And again, these are just Kentucky specific IDs. Each state is going to vary a little bit. You're going to have to check your individual state and see what the holograms look like and what any UV markings there are. Some of them will have a like the newer real ID for Kentucky. It actually has a little, I guess you say, a window on there. And you can actually kind of see through it, but it has a copy of your photo on there, so that when you tilt it just the right way, you see your photo again. Some other state IDs may already incorporate that, which ones I don't know. All the other regular Kentucky IDs don't have anything like that. They just have the holograms on the front and the UV markings on there. So this example right here was just a real legit ID. It's just that whoever this person was, or whoever the person was that was giving this ID to me, it wasn't them. And I don't remember how I caught that one, but it was obviously not that person. Another thing that people will do is they'll make the ID harder to see. They'll rip the plastic off, they'll rub on it, give it a bleached kind of look. That way the picture is kind of fuzzy. Another example is right here. So this person ripped the laminate off the front and did something to the ID to blur some of the stuff, made it look like, it'd been in the wallet for so long, it just degraded over time, and made the face fuzzy and some of the other information fuzzy in hopes that, whoever's checking the ID would just give it a quick once over and then let the person in. Another example would be this, and you don't see this very often anymore because IDs like this aren't really being produced anymore. So this type of ID right here, it is a PVC card, thick piece of plastic. Think of like a hotel key card, right? So the states buy these things and they're blank, they're just white. And there's a special printer, special machine that this blank all white PVC card goes through, and then it prints the image on there. And the image being the whole graphics and everything, the letters, the little shape of the state, and all the pictures and everything. It's all printed on there. And then they take a laminate cover, a little thin film, and apply that over there to kind of seal it in and protect it. These IDs are not like that at all. This is basically a piece of paper that was laminated. And that was how IDs used to be several years ago. If you were a kid in the 90s, you probably remember having an Identikid ID made. So in the event that you were ever kidnapped or went missing or something, your parents had an ID of you to give to the police. Same concept, just a printed piece of paper with a little passport kind of photo in there, or a printed photo, whatever, and then they just put it through a laminating machine and put plastic over it to protect the inside. So this particular one, I think, I don't recall because I don't see anything that's been too altered about it, but I think what this one was is it was either I think what this one was it was just not that person. They found some really old ID and was trying to use it. Now this one, on the other hand, this person cut the photo portion and was trying to change their image in here and slide it into the ID here. And they could keep that in their wallet, be in the viewfinder and everything. And if someone just checking IDs really quick, not giving a good inspection, could pass it over. But this one, whatever image was back there has been damaged by them gluing the new photo on there. But that was a common tactic way back in the day, was just to slide a new photo in there. Which, you go even further back than that, IDs just used to be paper. So you can imagine how easily that stuff could be faked. So I mentioned that people will tear the laminates off and rub at the stuff and make it a little bit difficult to see. There's been some people, and I don't have any here as an example, but there's some people who tore the laminate off, and they very, 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 very meticulously altered the date of birth information using a red pen or something red, and they were very meticulous in how they've done it. I've seen them before. I just don't know what happened to it. But I have seen where someone used something red and tried to alter it by making it show a different date. So those are the first two type of IDs that I've talked about. Real legit IDs made by the government. It just so happens that whoever is presenting it to you is not that person. And they have altered an ID in some way to try to get it past you. The third one I talked about, internet bot IDs. So this was an example that I showed you what an internet bot ID looks like. This is PVC card. Again, it's hard to explain to you by word. You just have to hold a real ID in your hand, and you can just feel the texture and its build and be able to tell, you know, if it's PVC or not. And then just by tilting it, you can see reflections of light off the surface, and you can see the holograms on there, but two, you can see where the laminate goes to, and check the sides, and you see there's no splitting or anything. So for the untrained person who's just checking IDs, you know, this could very easily pass inspection, especially, you know, if you was like in a bar in Texas, someone from Wisconsin's coming down there, or you're in Florida and someone with an ID from South Dakota comes in there. Chances are you probably don't have a whole lot of people from South Dakota coming into your college bar. And so, you know, they could have an internet bot ID that's, you know, made out of PVC and it looks legit, and you'd have no idea unless you've actually held a real South Dakota ID in your hand. So store-bought ID, another store-bought ID, again PVC with goofy little holograms on there. Let's see here, another store-bought ID. So this one, let's see if I can get the reflect for you. This one has a hologram of, looks like an eagle head, and then of course it says authentic. So an obvious fake that was internet purchased. Another one, this one's from Florida. It has the little key symbols on there, and then has the little seal on there that says authentic. Alright, so I think the rest of these, let me check them real quick. I think the rest of these are actual legit homemade IDs. Some of them are pretty good. They spend a lot of time crafting their fake ID. But this one I'll show you, just by feeling it, you can tell it's a little off, especially when you hold it to the side. And you can see that it's paper, and it just may be a little too difficult to see in camera. But once you get it out of the wallet, if this was in a wallet, you might not think anything of it. And once you take it out and you flick the corner, oh, look at that, it's a piece of paper. So what I'm assuming this person did was they just printed this out of the printer. Probably went to Staples or somewhere and got some thick paper and printed it out. And I'm not sure what kind of laminate they used. Probably like Scotch tape or something like that. It could just be a real thin laminate, and cover the top of it. And so I want to bring up again, tilting the real ID. So, and let's see if you can tell. So up here at the top, you can see the laminate where it doesn't cover all the way. That's typical with a real ID. They don't cover the entire thing with a laminate. This one, the laminate covers the entire upper surface, but whenever they had made it, they didn't think about that, and so it just covers the whole front of it. This is an obvious homemade fake. I'm sure this person got into several bars like this by keeping it in their wallet, and no one thought anything of it. This is another homemade one. It's just I don't know what exactly they used, but the paper material on the inside doesn't have anything printed on it. It's the clear stuff that has printing on it. So I'm assuming they got some clear paper and put it in their printer and printed this off, and then got some thick cardstock of some sort and put it on there. But this was another one to catch that was pretty easy, again, because the laminate goes all the way to the top, and you can just tell from the edges whenever you take the ID and you inspect it and you tilt it or whatever, you can always take your finger and rub the edges like that and counterfeit IDs will always tear for the most part. Another one that's homemade, again, just if it was in a wallet, you wouldn't think anything of it. Take it out, and you can tell just by feeling it that something's off. But the corner, again, they just got some thick paper and printed two different things and slapped them together and made a seemingly decent ID. It's just obvious that the holograms are not on there. Whatever they did do and copy off of, it almost looks like there's a faint copy of the hologram on there, like whatever they probably put in a scanner. And when that little light shined over, it reflected some of the DOT symbols on there, and you can see where it copied very lightly the reflection of those holograms. But when you tilt it, you don't see any holograms. And this one's, I think that's how I don't remember how I caught this one, but that sticks out to me, that you can see where the holograms were, and it's obvious that the scanner or copying machine, whatever they used, copied the reflection. But again, it's just paper put together, so it's pretty easy to spot. This was another one that was obviously fake. It's just two pieces of paper stuck together, making a Tennessee ID. This guy, he's got it's thick. It doesn't bend a whole lot. It seems like it could be kind of legit, but when you peel it back, it's another ID of someone else back there. And whoever this person was, they scratched out their face and their information on the back. So the back of this ID is legit, is real. So I guess if you scan the barcode or whatever, it would show up as being, you're 21 or whatever. But the very front of the ID has paper on there, and the very back is someone else's ID. And it could be this person's ID, just showing them being under 21. I'm not sure. Haven't fully peeled it away because I still use it as a training prop. This one, another obvious fake. This person also did the clear film with the print on it. It's kind of produces an alright look, but again, as I noted earlier, the laminate goes all the way to the top and doesn't stop. Its thickness, it kind of feels alright, but you can just tell that it's not PVC. And then you look at the color difference. So there's some obvious coloring issues on this. It's a little too dark, it's a little too fuzzy looking, and of course, holograms are not there. Another fake ID. This one is probably a better quality one as far as the print goes. It looks spot on as a real ID, but it lacks any holograms on there, and it's just two pieces of paper glued together. No telling how many bars this person got into. This is another store-bought ID. It looks kind of spot on, and this company, whoever they are, they put their holograms at the bottom, just like a real Kentucky ID, but when you tilt it, you see the little goofy authentic symbols flash at the bottom right here. So the two things that stick out to me is it's a little too light looking, it's a little too bleached looking, and then of course the holograms at the bottom obviously don't match the Kentucky Department of Transportation symbols. But this was actually a kind of a decent one, because if you had a long line of people and you were checking IDs, and you just, as you were bringing it up, you saw reflections of a hologram at the bottom. Oh, okay, all right, here you go, and go on. This one, another obvious fake. You can just tell with the discoloration there that something's off about it. No holograms. And upon closer inspection, this guy used a hotel key card as the base, and then put his printed pieces of paper over top of it. I do vividly remember this one because I remember taking it out and filling it, and I peeled it back, and I just started laughing. It was pretty funny. Another fake ID. This guy, he printed this off and he glued it to the back of something from Western Kentucky University. Has important telephone numbers, public safety, resident life, housing, whatever, different phone numbers on there. But the front it's obviously fake and printed. I don't even know what the other side of this card is. It could be a Western ID. I really have no idea. I don't want to peel the stuff off too much and ruin it. But yeah, whatever he did was he printed the front of a Tennessee ID, slapped it to a card from Western Kentucky University. And this is another example of why you need to take the ID out of the wallet, because it may look legit on the front, but as soon as you turn it around, ooh, Western Kentucky University, didn't know that was in Tennessee. This one, Louisiana. Again, you can just tell with, you can tell that this was copied off of something. Like you just see like the end of the copier got there, and it's got that dipped look or whatever. Can't explain it very well. It's just discolored looking. Like you can just tell it's an obvious fake, and then when you inspect it, it's just paper that they try to make look legit. So this is what they call a permanent resident card. Real permanent resident cards are made out of plastic, not paper. And so what this person did was they printed this out of a printer probably, and made it look all legit and everything. But you can tell that they took just regular Scotch tape and tried to line it up perfectly to make it look laminated. You can see if you hit it just right with the light, you can see the creases with the tape in there. And again, another reason why you want the ID out and in your hand, so you can see how, one, flimsy it is, and then two, those little imperfections that you can get by tilting it and having the light reflect off it just right. An Indiana ID. Now, what's interesting about this Indiana ID is the back of it appears to be a copy of a Kentucky ID. Like they printed it out. And the front, whatever the front is, I don't know what it is, but it's obviously they printed and glued it down, because when you peel the corner back, there's something else on the back of this card. What exactly it is, I don't know. It's possible that it's just another ID over top of it, or under it, and they just put a printed piece of paper over top of it. I'm shining a light through the back of it right now to see if I can see anything. I can see up here at this top corner. You might not be able to see it with the camera, but I can see a very faint signature over here coming through the material when I shine the light behind it. So I think there's an ID on this, under this printed out thing. Yeah, because I can see, I think that's someone's face. Yeah, that looks like the shape of someone's face in behind here when I shine the light through it. And there's something red colored. There's obviously nothing red colored right in here, but when I shine the light, I can see something red back there. So they just printed something off and stuck it to some other type of ID card. I don't know what this is. And that is it for my show and tell of fake IDs. Again, just to recap, the importance of catching these fake IDs is going to reduce the criminal and civil liability for the establishment, and then also for the people working there as well. What I classify as fake IDs is, number one, it's a real legit government ID, but the person giving it to you is not them. The second type is, again, a real legit ID, and it's not the person giving it to you, but has been altered in some way where they've tried to make it look fuzzy or something like that. Which of course means that the first type of ID, being a fake ID, and it's not them, it's a perfectly fine looking ID, it's immaculate looking. It's just the person who's trying to give it to you, it's just not them. Third type is what I classify as an internet bot ID, something that these kids will just go online and buy an ID, and they can look kind of convincing. They come on PVC card, they got little holograms on them, they look legit. And then the fourth one is homemade IDs. Some of them are laughable, easily tell them apart from a real one. But there's a couple of them that they look kind of legit at first glance, like this one. Other than it having a bleached appearance, whenever you tilt it, you see holograms at the bottom. And just like a real Kentucky ID, there's holograms at the bottom. Having a trustworthy person on the door is paramount. If you don't have a trustworthy person on that door checking IDs, you might as well just throw Joe Blow on the ID that you never met and don't trust at all. And I get it. You got, especially in a bar with young people, people wanting to hook up, what have you, making friends, socializing, whatever. You're going to have, if you put someone that's a little untrustworthy on the door, yeah, they're going to let that cute girl in, or they're going to let their fraternity brother in. They're going to let, the roommate in, their roommate's girlfriend, brother, sister, whatever. They're going to take that chance. Or you're going to have someone who'll take an extra 20 just to let someone in, or take a 50 or something like that. So one of the most paramount things is having a trustworthy person on that door doing the IDs. Knowing what IDs look like, having an ID book, and forbidding vouching. I forgot to mention that earlier. So vouching, like a bartender can come up and be like, oh yeah, I know this person. Yeah, they're 21. They're cool. They can come in. Or another or cocktail waitress coming up. Oh yeah, I know them. They're 21. They're good. Or another security person coming up. Oh yeah, man. Yeah, he's my buddy. He's 21. Forbid vouching. If you're an owner of a bar watching this, my advice to you is no one but you, the owner, can vouch for someone. If you're the owner, the steps that it took to get your liquor license, how much it cost, how much your inventory cost, and everything. And of all people, how much of a financial loss you would get if you lost your liquor license due to underage people being caught in there multiple times and ruining your business. No one should be able to vouch for somebody. If you're the owner and you're not going to be there a whole lot, and you have a manager that you would allow to make decisions like that, then it needs to stay with just that manager. And it's going to be a case-by-case basis. If you don't trust that manager's doing it right, don't even give them that power to vouch for someone. My overall advice to owners of bars and nightclubs, just don't allow anyone to vouch for anyone. Mandate that everyone produce an ID to get in. If you're a security director or a manager of a bar, same thing. No one under you should be vouching for anyone at all. Not under any circumstances. Go ahead and just nip that out. You can also create an incentive program with your security staff for catching fake IDs. For every fake ID that a person catches, they can get some type of monetary value, like a reward, like, oh, you got a fake ID. That's, we'll give you $10 extra. So if you catch 5 fake IDs during the course of the night, well, that's an extra $50 for you. If it's a college bar and you got, someone there working security part-time, maybe another type of incentive that you could do for someone working there is when they're not working and they come in, they can get some discounted drinks or some free drinks even though technically free drinks in a bar is illegal by law. We all know it goes on. So as a manager or owner, that's another incentive that you could do. Or make it a friendly competition kind of thing, for the month. Whoever has the most fake IDs gets $100 or something like that. You can come up with some creative ways to create an incentive-based program for your security or doorman to be really vigilant in catching fake IDs. What do you do with your fake IDs after you've collected them? Number one, if you're working the door and you take a fake ID from someone, don't ever give it back to that person. Go ahead and throw it in your pocket. And that's another reason why I always recommend getting the ID in your hand, and having some space in between that other person, and holding it, not just loosely, but get a decent little grip on there, because I've had people try to reach up and rip that ID out of my hand and just take off running. And if they do that, well, they can just come back another time and try again. And if you're off that weekend and someone else is working, boom, that person can get in. And if they get caught, someone's getting in trouble. Usually not the person with the fake ID, believe it or not. It's been my experience. If you have an office within your bar that only the owner and the manager have access to, throw them in a drawer, collect some at the end of the month. You can go, hand them to the cops who come through for what they call bar checks. So most of the time in a lot of places, local police will just go into a bar and they call it a bar check. They're supposed to be going in, check and make sure the liquor license is posted up and everything, and just checking little things, making sure there's nothing illegal going on. A lot of times when you see cops do that, they're just either they're bored and they have nothing else to do and they just want to go inside the club and bar and see what's going on, or they're looking for someone in particular and that they think is there, or they're trying to take that establishment down, trying to find whatever reason to hit them up. But usually it's the first one. They're just bored. They got nothing else to do. There's no calls holding or anything like that. But whenever those officers would come in, you'd be like, "Hey man, I got some fake IDs," and you hand them, a whole sack of IDs like this. Like, "Yeah man, these are all the fake IDs that we caught last weekend." Those officers working that beat or that district, whatever they call it, when you hand a bunch of fake IDs over to them, that's going to show them that you're making a good faith effort in trying to keep underage out, and that may keep them from putting you in their sights, so to speak. Because without them being in there and experiencing stuff, they don't know for sure. They can suspect that a bar is catering to underage and everything like that. And, a lot of bars that, they let underage in just to let them in. And it obviously causes complications when they get caught. But, just by handing over a stack of fake IDs to the cops who work that beat or whatever, it shows them that you're making a good faith effort to try and do stuff. And if they did come in there and they did catch an underage person in that bar, they may just leave it at that and, take the fake ID from the underage person and kick them out for you and not give you a citation. So saving these and handing them to the police could, in the long run, save you from getting citations, because they know you're trying. They know that you're trying to combat underage getting into the bar and drinking and stuff. And another option is to just destroy them. If you got a shredder with a little credit card slot on there, you can just pop these things in there and it'll eat them up. One thing that I have done in the past to prevent other people from taking those fake IDs and turning them back into their friend, which had happened on a few occasions. I didn't find out till later, but I remember I took an ID from a person, and next thing I knew, it could have been that weekend after that. I don't vividly recall, but I do recall that I took an ID from someone, and it just stuck up my head that I took that ID from them, and they end up with that same ID again. And what turned out to be was, I don't know if it was one of the bartenders who was friends with the manager or what, or if it was the manager themselves, but they had gone in that drawer with the IDs and pulled that ID out and gave it back to that person. Either the person who was underage, or the person who the ID really belonged to, or who that real person was, came up and like, hey, I think someone took my ID from my wallet. Do you have it? And they may have given it back to them at that point. So one thing that I had started doing at some point, whenever I thought there was any suspicion that could be happening, or if I was wanting to make sure that that wasn't going to be happening, is I took a lighter and I held the lighter over the face on the ID and burned the person's face off so that it couldn't be used again. And I'm going through the stack of stuff, see if I can find that one example, but obviously me wanting to use an example isn't going to work because it is wanting to elude me right now. But yeah, you can just take a lighter and hold it over the face of the ID and burn the face off, and then they can't ever give that. Here it is. So this ID, it was, I don't remember, it was someone, but this might have been, actually this was the person who I took their ID from them to begin with. I found out it got back to them. I took it again, and to prevent them from ever getting it back, I burned the face on there. I'm like, all right, you might get the ID back, but you're not going to ever use it again. So you can do something like that. You can take a permanent marker, scribble out the face or something like that, but you can always take permanent marker and rub it off. If you have a hole puncher, you can take a hole puncher, and with an ID like this, you just take that hole puncher and then go click right there in the center and punch out their face where you can't ever see it again. You can do things like that so that these IDs that were once being used can't be recirculated out to the little underage people. And again, as far as catching these things, the most important thing as far as looking at them is getting it out of that wallet and physically handling it. That is going to be one of the biggest ways of being able to tell if these things are fake or not, just by the feel of them and just running your finger over it and everything, seeing how the light reflects off the surface. You're just going to be able to tell just by looking at it. And when it's in a wallet and you're looking through the little viewfinder, you can't see those details very well. So always get it out in your hand, inspect it, and then secondary to that, once the jig is up and you've busted them, they know they're busted. You are in possession of it. They're not. So you just throw it in your pocket and tell them to kick rocks. If you have any comments or suggestions, go ahead and leave them down in the comment section. You can send a message, but I always recommend people to throw it down in the comment section. There's no such thing as a stupid question. Ask it. Head on over to the Facebook page. Do the same over there. Earl Henderson, Primordial Defense. Thank you for watching.